PodCastle, episode 817 for Tuesday the 12th of December 2023. Creatures in the Walls by Dovey, read by Peter Adrian Berevesh and produced by Devin Martin. Rated PG-13, with a content note for child abuse. Good morning, good day, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to PodCastle, the flying castle of fantasy fiction. I'm your host, Matt Dovey, and it's my pleasure to present for your enjoyment Creatures in the Walls by Dovey, narrated by Peter Adrian Berevesh. And it's a privilege to say that this story is a PodCastle original. Before we get into it, a reminder that this, right now, is the first ever Escape Artists End of Year campaign, wherein we stand on our cold Victorian street corner rattling our tin to ask for donations, because all this, and you will have to imagine me gesticulating wildly at the entire edifice right now, all this only flies because our audience funds it. This is our 15th year. 15th! And we've done all that funded by donations, without selling out to Spotify, without trying to sell you mattresses every week, but just by trying to be the very best we can be at what we do, in the hopes you'll feel inclined to support us directly. We are as astonished as anyone that it's worked so long, and we want to keep it working. So here's some ways you might like to support us. Our Patreon is the very best way, because you get access to the rewards and goodies from backing at different tiers, and we get regular, predictable, reliable income upon which we can build this castle ever higher. Our PayPal is now more cost effective than ever, thanks to our new 501c3 non-profit status, meaning we pay lower fees than ever before. And speaking of non-profit status, if your tax affairs reside in the United States of America, donations to us may now be tax deductible, and you might be able to donate through a workplace giving program. We can now accept stock donations and gifts from donor advised funds, which might be words that mean more to you than they do to me. And honestly, a whole bunch of stuff that Sam Faree, our non-profit fundraising expert, has detailed in a blog post at escapeartist.net. Go to that address or click EA Prime at the top of our website, and the top post has more details about all this stuff. We sincerely appreciate any and all support you can give us, because we try our best to lead the way in speculative fiction and be the change we want to see in the field. We pay everyone who contributes to the production of these casts, which makes the voluntary work more viable for those of marginalised backgrounds and helps address historical imbalances in publishing opportunities. We publish sample contracts publicly to encourage transparency and better terms across the field. We work to pay it forward and work with new markets to share any lessons we've learned the hard way. And, above all, we try to give you one story, told well, each week, because stories are how we shape the world. Let's have a story now. Dovey is a creative writing student at the University of British Columbia. This is her second story in PodCastle. The first, Mariska and Major, was featured in 2020. She has published one novel, The Sunlight Plain. Her writing has been published in literary journals, online and in print, such as the Lakeview Journal, Muse India and the Purple Breakfast Review. Dovey loves to write character-driven stories and fantasy stories with a heavy focus on interpersonal conflicts. She occasionally blogs and would love to have the time to make more YouTube videos. Peter Adrian Berevesh is an Iranian-American musician, writer, editor, audio producer and narrator. For these endeavours, he has won the Miller and British Fantasy Awards and has been nominated for the Hugo, Ignite and Aurora Awards. His interactive novel, Heaven's Revolution, A Lion Among the Cypress, is forthcoming from Choice of Games, and his essay, Pearls from a Dark Cloud, Monsters in Persian Myth, is forthcoming in the OUP Handbook of Monsters in Classical Myth. When he isn't crafting, crooning or consuming stories, Peter can usually be found hurtling down a mountain, sipping English breakfast and sharpening his Farsi. You can read his sporadic ramblings at peteradrianberevesh.com or on Twitter at PABerevesh. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and it is important you hear words of kindness spoken to you, too.
Creatures in the Walls by Dovey. One morning before breakfast, Ro's mother is shrieking. She is bejeweled, always moderating her tone and smiling in placid, dull-eyed ways. She is a duchess. It's part of her job. She only ever shouts at the servants. Today, she shouts at Father. "I refuse! What kind of creature? How dare you?" Ro stares at his parents, fascinated. Both are dressed in silks. The housekeeper behind them holds rolls of gray fabric in her arms. This seems to be the bone of contention. Perhaps Mother is furious because it is not as nice as the gold-embroidered dress she wears. Perhaps it is a gift that didn't meet the standard. Ro approaches it, tugging on the housekeeper's skirt. "Can I see?" Madeline rushes up after him and takes his hand. "Come," she urges. "Today you can take breakfast in the garden." But he is dragged out of the dining room, yet cranes his neck to see his mother ranting at Father's stiff, silent form. The fabric in the housekeeper's arms moves. A single pudgy hand sticks out, reaching for a shaft of sunlight. They lower the baby into Ro's old bassinet and keep it in a spare bedroom. Ro has to stand on tiptoe to get a good look. He used to be the same 5 years ago, a wormy little infant who could not raise his head. This baby shares his brown complexion, Father's complexion. They have the same inky hair, though Ro's is more copper than black. "So cute," Ro whispers, staring at its little nose and lips. His voice disturbs the baby. It opens its eyes. Ro gasps. He has never in his life seen eyes like this. They are dark, like his own, but there's something in them. It's like he's staring through black water at submerged diamonds. The eyes are bright. Too bright. The baby blinks. Ro reaches out. He wants to touch its cheek, pat its head. He wants to hold it. Just before his fingers brush against it, though, Ro stops. The baby is staring at him. Is it scared? It must be. Where is its mother? Ro has had nightmares. He hates being touched when he's scared. So he retracts his palm. "Hey," he says, "you'll be okay. I promise." His mother's heels clop into the room. "Ro!" she cries, yanking him away from the bassinet. "Don't get too close." "Am I a big brother now?" Her nostrils flare. "That thing is not a baby, and it's certainly not your brother." "So he's a boy?" Ro twists free of her grip and darts back to the bassinet. "What's his name?" "We don't name dirty things that come in from the street. And keep your distance." She pulls him back a second time. "You'll get hurt." Ro giggles. "He's a baby. What's he going to do?" She glowers at him. "Your father is a man of poor self-control. That thing is a monster." She puts her hands on his shoulders and marches him out of the room. They call the baby Caprian. Mother refuses a naming ceremony, but Father just starts to call him Caprian, and it takes everyone a few days to figure out who he's talking about. Father tells Ro that he is a big brother now, and Madeline tells him that big brothers have to set an example. "So you must go to bed on time and eat all your vegetables and put your toys away, because Caprian will do what you will do, and don't you want him to be a good boy?" Ro doesn't have an opinion on this, because he's not allowed to see Caprian alone. Madeline accompanies him into the baby's room. He's not allowed to touch him either. The wet nurse won't hear of it. Everyone keeps saying that Caprian is quiet, that he never cries, that he sleeps deeply and feels cold to the touch. One night, when the rain is coming down in sheets, he becomes too cold. Madeline comes screaming into the dining room as they're about to eat. The baby! I think he's dying!" "Good," Ro hears Mother mutter. Father launches to his feet and yells at one of the servants to call Senior Greenwood. He is a magic healer. He can fix anything. One time Ro broke his ankle falling off a tree and he fixed it in a minute. Ro weaves past the adult's knees. Madeline is holding Caprian close to her chest, standing by the fire. He is wrapped tightly in blankets as she rubs his back, almost near tears. "Come on, baby, open your eyes. Please, open your eyes." Caprian's brown skin is gray. For the first time in his life, Ro understands the meaning of the word dread. Senior Greenwood marches in eventually, carrying a big leather case, raindrops shining on his dark skin and graying locks. He takes the baby from Madeline, frowns severely, and places a hand on Caprian's forehead. He's cold, he observes. Perhaps he has used magic to diagnose the problem, because he adds, "The baby is malnourished. He is dying of starvation." "What?" Mother shrieks. "After the fortune we're spending on wet nurses." There's something else. Senior Greenwood unwraps Caprian from his blankets and places a palm on his chest. His frown deepens. "This child," he says slowly, "is not entirely human." Nobody says anything to that, but Mother scoffs. "What is he?" Senior Greenwood demands of Father. "If you do not tell me, I cannot save his life." "I'll tell you," Mother says with vicious glee. Its mother was a volcano. Yes, you heard me. A volcanic demon with, what was it you said, darling? With skin of glistening gold and eyes of sparkling sapphire? What woman can compete with that? "A spirit child," Senior Greenwood mutters. If his mother was the spirit of a volcano, then he will not be satisfied with breast milk. He glances around the room and gestures for one of the lamps. Madeline brings it over. "What are you doing?" Father demands. Senior Greenwood takes oil from the lamp onto a spoon and gently pours it into Caprian's mouth. Ro's nails dig into his palms. Thrice Caprian is fed this way, until the color in his skin becomes brown again, and he opens his eyes and wails. Madeline lets out a happy cry. She takes Caprian into her arms and bounces him on her hip. Senior Greenwood pours the rest of the oil into a bowl and tells her to give Caprian as much as he will eat. The others leave the room. The servants go one way, but Mother and Father and Senior Greenwood stop at the end of the corridor. Ro scurries after them, because no one will answer his questions directly. "He was dropped at the palace gates the other day," Father explains to Senior Greenwood. "It is true. I had a tryst with a volcanic spirit." "You will find that Caprian has gifts," Senior Greenwood responds. Yes, his eyes frighten the servants. His mother's eyes glowed even brighter. Mother storms off. They wait for her footsteps to fade before they resume talking. "Does he drink milk?" "I don't know," Father says, "but I hadn't heard otherwise. Perhaps he can eat human food, but he'll need kindling to survive. There is a fire in him, Your Grace, and that fire cannot be allowed to go out. You have lost babies before. You know the pain of it." Father nods stiffly. He turns then and spots Ro. He sends Ro to bed without supper for eavesdropping. The years pass, and the fights get worse. Mother screams at Father about how she didn't have 5 miscarriages for her son to not be the heir apparent. Father shouts back that Ro's inheritance was never at stake. He was the older brother anyway. She calls Caprian it and thing, and Caprian, who is only 3 years old, is still perceptive enough to know that Mother wants him dead. When she enters the room, he stops laughing. He keeps his head down and follows behind Madeline instead. He tries very hard to do nothing wrong. One winter, while Ro and Caprian are playing toy soldiers together, Caprian stands and toddles over to the fireplace. Fire doesn't burn Caprian. It's one of his gifts. So Ro doesn't stop him. Caprian sticks his hands into the hearth and grabs fistfuls of coal. He eats them. The burning embers fall from his mouth and onto the carpet, which begins smoldering. "Caprian, stop." Ro runs up to him. "Stop, you'll burn the palace down." "I'm hungry," he complains, taking another piece of coal. Black smears cover his mouth. He tries to pat the flames out of the carpet with his hands, but where his fingers touch the fabric, it ignites. Ro screams, jumping back, flames ballooning between them. Caprian shrieks because Ro's screaming scares him, because he has set the playroom on fire, because he is a horrible, terrible thing. Ro yanks down the curtain with a powerful tug. The rod crashes to the floorboards, nearly on Caprian's head. Ro tries to smother the fire with the drapes, and in the shouting and the chaos, footsteps clatter into the room. Madeline swoops in, lifting Caprian up in one arm and taking Ro's hand in the other. Out! Out, both of you, she orders. The housekeeper and the butler come next. A pail of water is fetched, then another, and mercifully, the flames go out. No one is hurt, but the carpet is nothing but a cinder, and there are scorch marks up the walls. Caprian is sobbing, saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," like it's a song his tutor taught him to belt. Mother marches towards them, sees the destruction, and snatches Caprian out of Madeline's arms. "You," she hisses, setting him on the floor. Rose never noticed how tall his mother can be until right then, when she's towering over his baby brother, who is covered in coal streaks and tears. "If you ever put Ro in danger again, you monster!" And she slaps him so hard he falls off his feet. Later, when Madeline is helping Ro into his bedclothes, he says, "Caprian was just hungry. He's little. He didn't know what would happen. It wasn't fair what Mother did." "Let me tell you a secret, Master Ro," she replies, buttoning his shirt. "The world is seldom fair. People wish it to be, but they rarely do anything to make it fair." Ro chews his lower lip. He's not a monster. You should tell him that. Caprian's room is dark, but Ro can hear him crying in his pillows. "Move," Ro tells him, crawling into his bed. Caprian clings to his torso and buries his head in his stomach. I'm sorry, he weeps. Ro pats his head. "You're not a monster. You're going to be okay." He stays with Caprian until they both fall asleep. From that day on, Ro becomes Caprian's protector. He shouts at his mother when she calls him a monster, even if that means getting punished and going without supper. He argues with Father when Father says that Caprian ought to learn to be a soldier, that his fire powers are no use if he's not at war. He chases after the boys and girls who call Caprian names, and worst of all, the ones who get too friendly. There are those, among the children and the adults. They look into Caprian's strange eyes and covet him in a way Ro does not understand, in a way Ro never wants to understand. They want him, or they want something from him, or both, but they don't like to let him out of their sight. Caprian is 4 the first time he's kidnapped. He's found by sunset, terrified but unhurt. The perpetrator, a rich moneylender, is sentenced to hang, but before he is imprisoned, Father asks him his motives. Ro is listening through a crack in the door. Anger surges through him, and if he had Caprian's powers, he might burn the villain himself. "I have a great many beautiful things, Your Grace," he replies proudly, "but your younger son is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." After that, Caprian is not allowed to go anywhere alone. Madeline is with him all day, and guards are posted at his bedroom door at night. Ro, who is 9 and has started training for the politics of his future, rarely gets to see his brother. Between his studies, horseback riding, wrestling, and fencing lessons, and Caprian's increasing isolation, they only get to talk at dinner. Even then, Mother ensures that Caprian is excluded. He is given a block of firewood every night, which kindles him for many hours. Since the coal incident, he's not allowed to eat it at the table, or in the palace at all. He is sent to the stone-tiled courtyard, where he sits on a step, alone except for the guards, and finishes his meal. Sometimes, Ro excuses himself to sit with him. He's fascinated by how Caprian can bite through wood like it's the softest roast chicken. Surely if he did the same, he'd break all his teeth. "You should go back to the table," Caprian says one night. "Your stew will get cold." "It can be reheated. Maybe you can reheat it for me," he adds, nudging his brother. "I don't like my fire." He opens his palm and ignites a single orange flame on his finger. It dances in the breeze. Caprian sighs heavily, a sigh much too severe for a boy so little, and extinguishes the light with a flick. The second time Caprian is kidnapped, it is his 5th birthday, the day he was sent to the palace. Ro always gets parties and gifts. Caprian only gets what Ro gives him. This year, it's a family of wooden elephants Ro has carved and painted himself. His brother spends his birthdays in the gardens with his sketchbook, but this time, he is not there. He is nowhere. Alarms are raised, the guards are alerted, and a second desperate search finds Caprian drugged in the back of a cart bound for the chalet of a local countess. She'd seen Caprian when she'd visited Mother, and like all the others, she wanted to possess him. Ro sits with his brother all night as the effects of the drug wear off. Caprian is nauseated and dizzy. Ro wipes his chin each time he vomits. "You'll be okay," he assures, holding Caprian up by his shoulders. "Hey, you'll be okay." A few months later, Ro learns exactly what's happening when Father throws a state dinner and invites all the wealthy, important people in and around their city. It's a terribly boring affair for the most part, especially for Caprian, who isn't allowed to leave his room, lest he be taken again. Ro smuggles him out anyway. "Let's play a game." "What should we play?" Caprian's eyes shine happily. He's always happiest when it's just them. "I'll run, and you can chase me." "But I'm not as fast as you," Caprian pouts. He wants to play a game he can win, so Ro suggests hide and seek. Caprian is exceptional at hide and seek. Not because he has magic or anything, but because he's good at keeping out of the way. In the past, when they've played hide and seek, Ro has spent hours checking under beds and tables, only to find Caprian crouched behind sacks of rice or under dirty clothes in the laundry room. Ro counts to 100 and starts his search. He searches their bedrooms first, then the corners of the hallways and in Father's study. He avoids Mother's room because Caprian will never enter it, but scans the laundry room and every dumbwaiter he finds. He expects to keep looking for at least another hour when he suddenly spots a stray knee behind a large flower pot. "Found you!" Ro approaches, his curiosity building as Caprian doesn't come out. He just watches Ro, absently rolling a piece of gravel in his thumb and forefinger. He's probably being a sore loser. "Come on, it's your turn to seek." "Oh," says Caprian, clearly distracted. He stands. The pearl of gravel falls from his hand where it hits the crevice between two stone tiles. Count of 100, right? Though he covers his eyes, he is peeking through his fingers. "That's cheating." "I'm not looking." 1, 2, 3, 4. Count properly or I'm staying put." "Then you'll be easy to find." "Don't smart-mouth me." Ro pokes Caprian's head, hard, ignoring the way Caprian whines. "Count properly. Close your eyes." "No, I don't want to." "Why not?" "There was a man. Before," admits Caprian, slowly. "He might come back." "What man?" Caprian has been taken twice already. Ro cannot let it happen a third time. Maybe he won't survive the third time. "One of the guests," says Caprian. "He said his name was Wilhelm." "You look angry," he adds. That's when Ro realizes his fists are balled tight, shaking at his sides. "What happened?" Ro tries to keep his voice level, but Caprian's right. He's angry. His brother recoils, misreading his tone. "Nothing. I'm sorry. Please don't be mad at me." "I'm not mad at you." Ro swallows, loosens his hands. What did he do? Caprian has a stare like buried treasure coveted by hungry hands. He knows not to look people in the eye. Mother, Father, anyone he fears. Now, he averts his gaze from Ro. "I'm not supposed to say. He told me not to say." "You have to tell me." When he's silent, Ro takes a breath, thinks, future Duke, heir apparent, and declares, "I'm ordering you to tell me." It is the first command he has ever given. He sounds like Father, at least he thinks he does, but Caprian smiles. "That was funny," he says. "Do it again." "Don't smart-mouth me. Maybe he's a bad man. I don't want him to hurt you, so tell me what happened." "He made me promise not to tell anyone." Brothers are always exempt from promises like that. He puts his hands on Caprian's shoulders, and Caprian shrugs him off. Once more, his gaze falls, and this time, Ro can see his lower lip tremble. "You know the stories Madeline tells about princes kissing princesses?" He kissed you? On the mouth? Ro's stomach is hollow. What is it about his brother that makes people act this way? No, that's not the question. What is it about people that makes them want to hurt Caprian? Because it's not all of them. Father is cold, but he is not evil like this. Mother is vicious, but even she wouldn't think of hurting him this way. Madeline adores him. The guards and the other servants don't like to look him in the eyes, but they handle him like he's an ill-tempered foal, with gritted teeth and reluctant care. Nausea is rising in the back of Ro's throat. That shouldn't have happened. It didn't hurt, says Caprian in a soft voice. We need to tell Father. No, Wilhelm said they were friends. Father will yell at me. Then I'll yell at him right back. No, Caprian insists, even as Ro takes him by the hand, dragging him in the direction of the ballroom. Stop it! But he's not strong enough to twist free. Stop it, please! His voice becomes damp, like he's choking down tears. Please, I don't want to tell him. Stop! His other hand claps over Ro's fingers, and a sudden, prickling sting has Ro let go with a hiss. His skin is pink and inflamed where Caprian touched it. I can't believe you did that! Ro presses his digits to his lips and sucks the burn to soothe it. I said I don't want to tell Father. Tears thicken on Caprian's lashes. You have to tell somebody. I told you, isn't that enough? No, you have to tell a grown-up. What Wilhelm did was wrong. It was wrong, he says with more emphasis, so Caprian understands. Either you tell somebody, or I will. Does it have to be Father? Caprian whispers. He wipes his tears hurriedly. Then who else? Madeline? It's a compromise Ro doesn't like, but is willing to make. The next day, as Ro supervises, Caprian tells her. And she tells Father. It is not Caprian who is summoned into his study. It's Ro. Father glares down at Ro, his lips a thin line, and asks him to repeat the story, sparing no detail. Then he's silent for several minutes. Finally, he says, we'll get some glasses made for him. That way, he can hide his eyes. That's what attracts people. The eyes. Ro drops his jaw. Why don't you do something about Wilhelm? It's not Caprian's fault. Why are you making him wear the glasses? Duke Wilhelm is too powerful to touch. Besides, he isn't even that old, Father adds, approaching the window. From his study, he can see the sea. He's only 21. 21 is nothing. Caprian is 5. Yes. Young enough to get used to wearing glasses. After that, it's impossible to get Caprian to leave his room. He sits by the window and finishes his studies. Then he sketches obsessively, drawing the objects around him and the birds he can see in the sky. When he draws the birds, he draws them with veins showing through their feathers. He erases ribbony white lines in their bodies. When Ro asks him about this, Caprian says, it's the life in them. He doesn't like his new glasses. The lenses are clear, but Caprian keeps saying they obstruct his vision. Nobody listens to him, though, and if Father catches him without them, he gets a scolding. So he wears them. He sits by the window. He sketches. And he doesn't eat. He eats human food, rice and meat and eggs and veggies, but he nibbles at the firewood he's given. Sometimes he just throws it into the hearth and says he's not hungry. 2 weeks go like this. His hands are always cold, his pallor is sickly, and his teeth chatter at night. Even wrapped in blankets, he cannot get warm. You'll die if you don't eat, Ro tells him at last, exasperated and afraid. Maybe I should. Just shut up. The next day, Ro grabs a log and an axe from the woodshop. He's only 10, but he is strong and muscular and he is desperate, so he whacks and saws the log until it's just blocks. He collects them in a basket and runs to the kitchen where he asks the cook for honey. Caprian loves honey. Ro puts the wood in a large bowl, empties a whole jar of honey, mixes it well, and runs back to Caprian's room. Caprian stares into the fireplace, wistful, miserable, and doesn't even notice Ro until he drags Caprian up by the hand. His skin is like ice. They sit at the desk by the window, Caprian in his chair, Ro perched on the edge of the table, a bowl of wood blocks between them. "I'll go first," Ro suggests, taking a piece. "What are you doing? You can't—" Ro bites down and a jolt of pain shoots up his teeth. "Stop!" "If you don't eat this, I will." He bites down again, and this time he feels a sharp tug in his front molar. He howls as it comes off, buried deep in the honeyed wood. There's blood leaking down Ro's mouth. It doesn't bother Ro. He has been meaning to get rid of that last baby tooth. But Caprian is near tears. "No, please don't." "It's so sweet," Ro croons and smiles, though his smile must be a frightening thing, one tooth gone and the others covered in blood. His mouth tastes of metal. He goes in for a third bite, and that's when Caprian jumps off the chair and snatches the wood from his hands. "No!" Caprian shouts, and throws it towards the hearth. Okay, I'll eat." He grabs the rest of the bowl and scurries to the far side of the room, taking fistfuls of firewood in his mouth without even flinching. Honey and splinters coat his lips and chin. The boy has obviously been starving. Once he starts, he doesn't even look up. There's almost something animal about the way he eats, with both hands and feral speed. His skin is turning brown again. Ro finds a rag to stem the blood in his mouth. He hears Caprian say, "You shouldn't be so nice to me." "One day, you're going to be nice to me right back." That day comes on a summer afternoon when Ro is 13 and Caprian is 8. Though it is hot today, Ro feels chilly and tired. He is teaching Caprian how to wrestle, which is easy because he's bigger and stronger, and Caprian gives up every time. No, you should fight back." Ro sighs again, his temples throbbing. "You should fight me." "I'm trying." Then Caprian tackles him, and Ro goes down. "Finally," Caprian laughs, offering a hand. Ro sits up. Then he pitches sideways and blacks out. He can dimly hear Caprian yelling about how the light inside Ro's body is flickering and how he's leaking life. It doesn't make much sense, but he is aware of being carried in the arms of one of the guards, and then he's aware of Mother feeling his forehead, saying he has a terrible fever. When he wakes next, his chest is thick with cough, and it's dark outside. Mother, eyes wet, is sitting at his bedside. Father is not around, but that isn't surprising. "Where?" Ro tries, but his voice breaks into deep, racked coughing. He's shivering. Mother piles more blankets on him, but it doesn't help. "Shh, just rest. Senior Greenwood will be here soon." Caprian is not allowed in here," Mother sniffs. "Where do you think this fever came from? A fire demon, no doubt. It wants your inheritance. It will get you killed someday." It really irritates Ro when she does that. 8 years. If nothing else, surely Caprian deserves a he and a him. But he's too tired to protest, so he falls back into the pillows and waits. Senior Greenwood shows up eventually with his bag of tricks. He feels Ro's neck and forehead and sighs. "The southern flu. It's in the air. My 3rd case this week." "Can you fix him?" "Of course, my lady," says Senior Greenwood. "You should step outside and wash your hands. No point in you falling ill, too." It takes some urging, but Mother eventually leaves the room, and Senior Greenwood begins brewing a potion from the things in his pack. Ro curls up under his blankets, trembling. He has never been so cold before. "Can I ask you a question?" he rasps through his chills. "Yes?" "Caprian. Your brother is outside the door. He wants to come in." That makes him feel 100 times better already. Ro sits up against the pillows and asks, "Why do they want him?" "Who wants him?" The lamplights shine off Senior Greenwood's hands. "People want him. In bad ways." He grinds some herbs in a mortar and pestle. He's half volcano. Beautiful things are found inside volcanoes. Gems. Perhaps, but more than that. Power. It attracts the truly entitled. Spirit folk like his mother would eat these people. Father? Why did he survive then? I'm not sure. Senior Greenwood shrugs. Maybe she only wanted to mate. All I know is that it is those who are powerful and hungry for more who will seek Caprian out. The ones who believe the world is theirs to own and take from. It's a terrible curse to live with. The door opens a crack. They both turn, and of course, Caprian is there. Perhaps he heard them talk about him. He approaches the bed, glancing once to Senior Greenwood before clambering up on the covers. Ro leaks life, he murmurs. Can you see it? The flow of life? When I'm not wearing my glasses. I shall heal him. Don't you fret. You're cold? Caprian asks. He puts his hands on Ro's sweaty chest, and it's the strangest feeling. Like somewhere inside Ro's blood, there's a softly burning fire, heating him from the inside. It's so warm and cozy that Ro's eyes flutter shut in relief. He's not even aware of being given a poultice. He just feels Caprian burn the fever out of him. The second time Ro ends up in bed, it is, actually, Caprian's fault. They're 16 and 11, and it is the day of the Marigeld's Fair. The whole city is covered in banners as musicians march up Main Street right to the palace gates. Stalls sell fried fish and beer and beaded jewelry. People dance in the square and throw flowers and flirt. Ro and Caprian are each given an allowance to enjoy the festivities, and because Caprian goes nowhere alone, Ro accompanies him. Caprian spots a man selling char-grilled shrimp and says to Ro, I want that. Smells so good. I could go for some shrimp too. No, He pauses. The coal? He isn't allowed to have coal. Not since the playroom incident. He knows that. But it's such a good day, and Ro doesn't want to ruin it for the both of them, so he says, let's ask. They approach the vendor and explain what they need. He initially protests, but Ro buys a plate of shrimp and drops a sack of silver, half his allowance, for the coal, which quietens complaints. Caprian walks off with a bag full of coal chunks, and they sit on a parapet above the road watching the dances as they eat. I love this, Caprian chirps. His hands are black, but he's doing his best to be tidy. The light in his eyes is dazzling. It tastes smoky. I imagine it does. Caprian laughs. Don't tell mother or father, they'll have our heads. His little brother wrinkles his nose. Ro is the wanted one, the beloved heir, but somehow he still feels like it's just him and Caprian against the world. They're on their own side. After they eat, Ro takes Caprian to a fountain so he can wash up. The stains coat the grooves in his palms. Eventually, Caprian just wipes his hands on his dark trousers. If he sticks them in his pockets, maybe nobody'll notice. But Caprian's luck is rotten. When they return to the palace, Mother wrinkles her nose and says, Caprian, walk properly. What are you hiding in your pockets? And she notices the stains. The resulting argument is calamitous. Mother screams at Father about how Caprian intends to burn them in their sleep. Father shouts at Ro for letting Caprian have coal, and they both rip into Caprian for daring to enjoy himself at the fair. Ro, of course, shouts back. He's used to defending his brother by now, and it has damaged his relationship with his parents irreparably. He doesn't care. He just cares about Caprian. Ro, Mother snarls, this doesn't concern you. Get out. Like hell it doesn't concern me. Ro. Caprian looks up at him, wide-eyed like he did when he was an infant. It's okay. Go. Caprian, it's okay, his brother says again. Ro turns to leave the room, gritting his teeth so hard he's sure his jaw will break. Mother says, Of course it's your fault, you awful little monster. It takes all his strength not to whirl around and keep fighting. But he'll pick his moment. Caprian will need to be cheered up after this. So he hangs around the corridor, wishing he could duel the diatribe. When Caprian emerges, his fists are balled at his sides, and he stalks past Ro without a word. Hey, you okay? Ro scampers after him. Slow down and talk to me. Leave me alone. Caprian, let me help. I don't want your help, Caprian bellows. It's such a shock to both of them that they just stop. Caprian is breathing hard, and his eyes shine with tears. I don't need your help. I know what I am. I'm a monster. Don't call yourself that. Ro's voice is as low as Caprian's is loud. Why? He sneers. It's true. I'm a monster. It's what I am. Don't call yourself that. You can deny it if you want, but it's true. Everyone hates me because I'm a monster. Stop it, Ro orders. It leaves his mouth as an imperious snarl. He reaches out to hold Caprian as Caprian turns to run, and when his hand makes contact with his brother's wrist, Caprian attacks. It is a boy's charge, pure force and no finesse. He throws himself into Ro's torso and knocks him down, and where his palm touches Ro's shirt, the fabric ignites. No! Caprian shrieks, thrusting both hands into the fire, slapping it out the way it came. In the smoldering aftermath, Ro is dizzy. His vision fades. He's not in pain. Senior Greenwood says it's a 3rd-degree burn. It covers Ro's stomach from his hip to his navel, and Greenwood has prescribed alchemical salves to prevent infection. Caprian, father tells Ro, has been desperate to see him and practically inconsolable. He has gone back to not eating kindling, and Madeline is at her wit's end trying to force-feed him. Mother hisses about how Caprian should be at least exiled for attacking the heir. It's a lot to take in. Ro just wants to see his brother alone. They finally let him. Caprian traipses in, eyes red and downcast, skin shivering gray and littered in goosebumps. Caprian, you have to eat. Don't keep doing this. I hurt you because I ate that coal. It burns too brightly in me. I'm a No. Ro beckons him closer. Caprian hesitates, knees trembling, but then he approaches the bed. There are many monsters within these walls. They wear human skin. He thinks of his mother then, whose jealousy and heartbreak have made her cruel. He thinks of his father, who looked the other way when his own child was attacked. He thinks of all the men and women who have crossed these halls and have seen only a thing to steal and own. Ro places his hand on Caprian's cold cheek. You are what you are. There's no shame in it. I will protect you from anyone who tells you otherwise. If I have to, I will even protect you from yourself. Caprian wipes his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispers. I hurt you. I was angry. I didn't mean to, I swear. I'm not upset, Ro promises, but I will be if you use that word again. What am I then? Caprian goads. His voice is so tired. What am I if not a monster? What am I if not something to own and use and hate? Take one. Ro nods to the rack by the fireplace where fresh wood is stacked. Caprian mercifully obeys, picking a log and returning to the bed. Now eat, Ro orders calmly. Caprian bites down. You're my brother, all right? Ro lifts the covers and pats the space on the bed so Caprian can clamber in. And we have to look after each other. Caprian nods silently. And then we'll be okay. Yes. Ro smiles. And then we'll be okay.
And welcome back. That was Creatures in the Walls by Dominicane, and if you enjoyed that, her debut story was here 3 years ago, episode 655, Mariska and Major. You can find out more about Domini at her website, dominicane.com. Domini sent us these thoughts on Creatures in the Walls. Society has an interesting relationship with monsters. A lot has been written about the topic by people more intelligent and talented than me. We call them monsters and revile them because they represent the things we fear or dream about. Vampires and illicit desire, werewolves and hidden identities, ghosts and the fear of being left behind. Monsters are projections of ourselves, distorted shapes that reveal truths we'd rather hide. Yet every time we look away, our hunger draws our gaze back. Thank you, Domini, for the thoughts and the story. The first thought that came to my mind was Granny Weatherwax in Terry Pratchett's Carpe Jugulum, telling us that sin, young man, is when you treat people like things, including yourself. That's what sin is. And how much more on the nose can you get in calling a child it? Everyone here, except Thoreau, only sees Caprian as a means to an end, or as something to possess, for what he can do or what he can be, rather than who he is. Even Caprian himself, who constantly neglects his own needs, who begins to believe everything that others believe about him, all except Ro, who continues to see the humanity in him. He doesn't see a volcano spirit, but simply a brother, a person, someone else with aches and wants and needs and desires. And, as that Granny Weatherwax quote points out, we can be guilty of all this with ourselves, too. Of neglecting our own needs and wants and seeing ourselves as nothing more than objects of productivity, either in the capitalist sense you've heard me go on about so much, or in the sense I'm currently discussing in therapy of only perceiving yourself and the value you feel you have for others, in the favours you can do, the support you can give, the role you can play. That, I am slowly learning, is what self-care actually is. Not a little treat from the supermarket and an app-playing forest sounds, but of acknowledging, accepting, and acting on your own needs. Of understanding that you inherently and naturally deserve to be valued and looked after by others and by yourself, and that you should treat yourself with as much compassion and empathy as you treat others. We're getting near the end of the year, so please, and I am talking to myself here as much as to any one of you, try to take some of the holiday downtime and use it for what you yourself want and need, not what you think others want and need from you. As part of our 15th anniversary celebrations, we're asking you to send in your favourite stories from our archive. This week, we have a recommendation from Domini, as it happens. Episode 578, The Bone Poet and God, by me, saying that she likes everything. The originality, the language, the soft, delicate way it is written. I heard this story once, years ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Thank you, Domini. And while we're awkwardly discussing praise for my stories, I guess this counts as self-care and I can't try and wriggle out of this after that outro, can I? 2 anonymous commenters also recommended episode 667, Clouds in a Clear Blue Sky, with one saying, the build-up is so gentle and still powerful, and the other saying, to me, this story encapsulates what's so special about the fantasy genre and about short fiction. It's got this great, whimsical idea at its core, yet it uses that to tell a story about grief and moving on, creating something unexpected and bittersweet. It's one of those beautiful pieces that 2 years after listening, my mind still wanders back to it. Thank you, both. That was our show for this week. On behalf of everyone at PodCastle, your co-editors Shingai Enjoro Kagunda and Eleanor R. Wood, assistant editor Caitlin Zavanovich, audio engineers Devin Martin and Eric Valdez, and our many wonderful first readers, Andrew Cahoe, Craig Jackson, Amalia Harrington, Julia Patt, Kieran Corsini, Ryan Cole, Sarah S. Messenger, Sophie Barker, Shrikripa Krishna Prasad, Tava Nova, Tierney Bailey, Zeev Witties, and myself, Matt Dovey. Thank you for letting us share another story with you. The legal bit. PodCastle is part of the Escape Artist Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 international license. That means you can share it, and please do, but you cannot sell it and you cannot change it. If you want specifics, check creativecommons.org. Our music is by Shiva in Exile. Everything we do on PodCastle is 100% donor funded, and if you'd like to support what we and the rest of EA do, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/EApodcast. Prefer another method? There's details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartist.net. We'll be back next Tuesday with another fantastic tale. In the meantime, you might care to check out our sister podcasts: Escape Pod for science fiction, Pseudopod for horror, Cast of Wonders for YA speculative fiction, and Catscast for speculative cat stories. If your heart belongs to us though, we'll see you next week. Be safe and be kind.